Alright guys, welcome back to another edition of Bamcomixs. This time we're moving into the next episode. There's 2 more episodes left, I believe, after this one. So, what do we get? We get who's behind everything, right? Now, what we're seeing. We see Agatha's backstory. So Agatha's backstory, and the clan asks, this is way before, this is in Salem, Massachusetts, so back in time. So this episode we're going back in time. So this episode basically presents the backstory of Agatha Harkness, her villain ways, and the clan back in the day in Salem, Massachusetts asking her, are you a witch? Well, guess what? It's the whole coven, and she's on trial. You see her there at the stake. And what's crazy about this scene is that, guys, now it's like we see the villain's backstory, right? After we see that villain's backstory, it takes us on another journey. But this, we're getting a little piece of this backstory of who Agnes is. Who she is. She's an overpowered dark magic user of the coven who's put her on trial. She practices the dark magic, and they're accusing her, the coven, during this trial, they're accusing her of breaking the rules by seeking more power than what she's supposed to have. And she's like, no, it's not my fault. I didn't break your rules. It's my power, which basically is to be like a sponge, right? And harness the power of others for herself. So, she's telling them that. She's telling them that it's not her fault, that this is the way she is. And that you could even teach her to try to manipulate her powers. Unfortunately, her power is to absorb magic, so that's what she does. She absorbs the power. So as the coven, as you see in the beginning, as the coven are draining her, what ends up happening is that she drains them. She drains them. She absorbs their magic. She absorbs their life force, and in doing though, she steals all of this energy. And that's when the mother of the coven decides that enough is enough, and now she's going to place herself above all in the coven, trying to strike down Agatha. And she's still in the stake. She feels her suffering, but at the same time she doesn't. She's like, you can't be good, she tells her, because she's like, I can be good. She's saying, no, you can't. So just as the coven mother declares judgment on Agnes, you see the villain's backstory played out. She eventually overpowers the coven mother and then, steals her amulet. And that's basically how we come into, there's no more TV show, right? So we're coming into this new episode fresh, clean. It's like more of the present day now. It's like the TV show, the MCU. We're not going back to do any kind of old style TV shows, right? Because now we're caught up. We're caught up with the illusion, and we're in Agatha's basement. So in Agatha's basement, they have all of these runes, stones inside of what appears to be the traditional witch's den. You got this witch den, you got the hex, you have, all of these things to make magic. And so since right now, Wanda is it's really crazy, because Wanda's in a situation where she's at a loss, right? And her pain is so great. So since Agatha has control of the runes, Wanda is crippled by self-doubt. So she uses that to her advantage, just like, in real life. It's crazy how it mirrors that dynamic, because you're sad and that puts you at a weakness that allows you to be manipulated. And so Agnes saw that. She saw the power surge from Wanda, okay? As now, the episode turns into kind of like half of the villain's backstory and the rest of it is the Ghost of Christmas Past by Charles Dickens. You know this, like where the ghost takes you in your back life, in your backstory, and shows you the moments in your life that made you the person you turned out to be, right? So you turned out to be this like super force that controls people's minds through magic. So it's a dark force. It's really an evil force. It's, holding people against their will and them not being able to break free of your dominion is certainly an evil force. And what we see is like Agnes, she shows you her magic. She shows you how she achieves mind control, because that's through, of course, a feeble psyche. So a weakened psyche. So think about it like in terms of your immune system. Once you have a weakened immune system, you're susceptible to disease. The same thing happened, of course, in Wanda's case. She was susceptible to mental manipulation at the hands of Agnes. So what happened, right? Okay, transmutation, you have mind control, right? You got that mind control. You got that Professor X mind control, and on top of that you have transmutation, which is basically like you can be hooded, like you can completely change. Transmutation, you change, right? You change into something else, so that's transmutation. So Wanda has the double she has that double power control where she can easily manipulate you mentally, but also through the process of energy fields create transmutation. Now, according to Agatha, this takes years of study. This is like, on some Doctor Strange, you really have to study the spells and, of course, the incantations and all of that. And it takes a long time, or at Agnes's mastery level, to probably in a few months learn things like this for, birds. And she basically illustrates that with like a bug or a moth, and transmutation, right, turns it into a bird. But at Wanda's power level is so great that this is instantaneous. So this, like, it comes out of her instantaneously. It's like magic on tap. Press that magic button. Speaking of magic on tap, hit that subscribe. Ding, ding, ding. Magic on tap. So what is this, right? She's like the West view through the eyes of Wanda. This is like magic on autopilot, she says, right? Like, just hit that snooze, hit that control, hit that autopilot, and the magic just runs itself, okay? Running incantations at the edge of town. So she's running incantations at the end of town. Wanda has so much tragedy in her life that now she's kind of like a phoenix, if you will, guys. She's like the phoenix. Like, this whole episode reminded me of like X-Men, like the phoenix, you see, because the phoenix in Marvel represents that like mega life-ending energy, or like all-consuming energy. That's the phoenix. That's why the X-Men have to be like, we got to put a pause on this phoenix right here, because that's too dangerous to be kept on Earth, right? Just like Professor X and his mind, they're like, these can be like world-ending, cataclysmic events, if you will. So Agatha needs to unlock the mystery of how Wanda came to conjure that magic, right? So now Agatha goes through like the Ghost of Christmas Past sequence, where we see Wanda in her past in Sokovia, her childhood. Now, her past, her family. All right, all of this like past stuff, that was pretty good, okay? It was pretty good. I think for people who are really not familiar with like the Age of Ultron, or who haven't seen the Age of Ultron, would definitely appreciate this. This was like a really good backstory into the character, right? But it's basically you see her as a child, right? where her mom and dad have like a suitcase of DVDs of sitcoms of all of this stuff. So they watch the Dick Van Dyke Show, and she's played out those memories of her childhood, and it manifested it in the magic, and you see how there was a bombing, and you see the Tony Stark logo, see the Tony Stark logo on the side of the missile, right? So all of that stuff was just like the dialogue in Age of Ultron, so we know all of this already. It was nice to see it, especially when it comes to like the DVDs that they had there of the sitcoms, because that right there is really was the key explanation for that, right? And I was thinking, man, are they gonna show the missile from Stark? Are they gonna show it? And lo and behold, when I was thinking it in my mind, they showed the missile from Stark. So this is not like it's like new things. This is just like backstory that we've already explored. But in the case of those who aren't familiar, in the case of setting up the overall main arc of everything, so it was essential to go back there. So they went back there for a little bit, so you saw the tragedy of her family. Then you saw, of course, in the next scene, she's joining Hydra, as a volunteer for Hydra for their scientific experiments with of course the Infinity Stone after the Battle of New York, when we see that Hydra came into possession of Loki's scepter, and Loki's scepter with its Infinity Stone allowed Hydra to conduct human experiments with volunteers, underground, overground, I don't know where it is, but this is in the Hydra base, of course, so we see that middle part of her backstory. And Agnes is starting to put the pieces together and seeing the tragedy of her life or whatever. But one key moment that I thought was really cool, alright, was like, alright, like, come on, like, let's make this show like more of a movie feel, because sometimes it still has that feeling to me of a TV show. But like more production values, like in a cinematic sense, you see that through the Infinity Stone, Wanda comes into contact with a force that it looks like something like a Lord of the Rings, the Eye of Sauron, but she saw in the fire the silhouette of the Scarlet Witch. So you see in the silhouette of the flames that she sees, like she sees the horns come up, and the gold, the flame, right, of it, and the silhouette of the Scarlet Witch. So, to me, it reminded me of the Phoenix in that part. So it's like the Phoenix, it's like that otherworldly cosmic force of energy, and it fused with the pain of course, an orphan, right? An orphan who was already traumatized by the war in Sokovia, traumatized by, of course, the West and Stark technology, the Stark's, global weapons proliferation. So we see that, and then we see, of course, then they move to the Avengers compound, right? So now flash forward to that. So step by step going through her life or whatever. So now she's in the Avengers compound, and this is after the Age of Ultron, so now Vision is also staying there, and they get chummy and stuff like that. So now we see the whole arc of like, now her parents died, her brother died, and now Vision died, right? Of course with Endgame. So then, we focus to, after Infinity War. And after Infinity War, she comes back to reclaim Vision's body to bury him. So she says that, she needs this for herself, right? She needs to bury Vision. He deserves at least a funeral. So this was really good post-Infinity to see Wanda go to the Sword Base and claim Vision's body for the burial. Initially, they didn't want to let her in, so she she got in. Of course, it's Wanda, she's gonna go in there. So she went in there, saw it. Tyler Hayward, of course, I call him the idiot. I hate this guy. This guy is just like, I just don't like this guy, right? Hate is a strong word. I don't like this guy at all, this Tyler Hayward. So, it proves that he's a villain. So he says, okay, well, to honor, to meet you, whatever, here's Vision, okay, this is what you wanted to see. And then you see below a whole bunch of like technical people taking Vision apart, because of course he's like he's an android, right? He's not human. He's, what gave him his humanity, what gave him his soul was like, of course, the combination of the three pillars, which is Tony's personality, Jarvis's personality, and Ultron's personality, and they fused together to create Vision. Now, Vision's personality then, as he continued to interact with the Avengers, formed his full personality. Oh, and also not to mention Dr. Banner, of course, the Hulk's personality. So all of that went into creating the next level of Ultron. Of course, let's not discount Dr. Banner's contribution to the project. But we see that we have fully awakened Vision, right? So what ends up happening? Man, she goes ballistic. Like, how could you take him apart like this? But they're taking him apart, and you see the insides of him, right? The specs and everything like that, like the wires, everything. It's like really cool the way they showed it. And I thought that was like the way the technical piece of it was, that they just were disassembling him, was so cold. Wanda breaks the glass, goes in there, tries to feel him, can't. She decides, you know what, he's gone, leaves, and in the passenger seat of her car, we see an open envelope. What's inside? What's inside is a deed to a land. So you see her travel outside of the sword base, and Hayward obviously set her up. She didn't go in there. She didn't steal Vision's body, okay? She did not. So let's clear the record on that. Clear that record. That's not part of the record anymore. It's part of Hayward's lies. Okay, so don't believe his lies. Don't believe Hayward, okay? Because he's a liar. So we see Wanda go to the sleepy town, Westview, New Jersey. And there's where we see the land that Vision had picked out for her, because Wanda opens the deed, and you see, to grow old in, with a heart around it, that Vision had bought her the deed to a land, maybe prior to the events of Endgame, when he was visiting her, when they were apart because, of course, of the Sokovia Accords after the Civil War, that they would reunite, and that's where they would live. So Wanda was possessed by such grief, as we talked about in this show so many times. We've talked about her grief, is that she created this through her trauma, right? Through her unresolved trauma, that everyone around her is constantly dying. So she let out the energy that created her immediate home, and then her surroundings, Westview, the Hex. So it was her all along. She created that. And then that is when Agatha discovers that, the way she did this was the byproduct of like a mythical legend that is not to exist in the realm of magic, which is like the ultimate harbinger of the chaos magic, the Scarlet Witch. And that's when, because she had the kid, as soon as Wanda did that flashback and remembered what happened, that she created, like, out of her suffering came, like, the Phoenix, if you will, like, the force that created everything in the first place, inside the Hex and inside Wanda's home. And, of course, Vision and everything, is that this is an incantation that keeps running. And it'll keep running for the people in the town under mind control, and also under transmutification. Right? Or transmutation. Transmutation, okay? Through transmutation. That's it. There, I said it. And so, guys, this is like, Agatha has kept Wanda's kids in a hostage type situation until she understands how Wanda got this power. So at the end of the episode, we see that when Wanda comes to the realization of what she did, there's a studio audience there. It's empty, right? She hears the sound of her kids being held captive by Agatha. And when she runs out and she sees them, that's when she tells her about, well, you're the Scarlet Witch or whatever. She tells her, you're the Scarlet Witch, like you're the force that cannot be controlled, and like you're like you're like super dangerous, like you're a big threat now. Now Wanda is like more like a Thanos type. This is like a world-ending. This could be a world-ending thing. You know, if not the world, it could be the universe, right? Because this is power from Infinity Gem, right? And this is like the Scarlet Witch, right? And that is where the episode ends. So they finally say her name. And guys, before I go, let me just end this by saying that it's not all fun and games anymore, because we see a post-credit scene where Hayward's plan is gonna round now. Hayward's plan is coming to fruition, guys. Hayward, who had the audacity to point a drone at Wanda, didn't do so because he thought the drone would take Wanda out, but he hoped that Wanda would imbue the drone with certain mystical, magical properties. So it was all part of Hayward's plan all along to have Wanda come out of the hex and throw that drone back to him, because you see, that drone possessed residuals of Wanda's magic, which they then used to make their own version of Vision, the synthesoid humanoid weapon that, of course, with $3 billion worth of vibranium, is now at Hayward's control. So this living, sentient weapon. And this is what Hayward wants, you know, maybe as Sword's weapon. But it's gonna be the next episode, gonna be nuts, because it's gonna be that sort of a weapon Vision against Wanda, against Wanda's Vision, against Agatha. Like, all of these forces are gonna converge, and we only have 2 episodes left. So that's been it. This has been OC from Bamcomixs. Make sure to hit those notifications and hit that subscribe for more updates. And we're gonna be having in our next episode, we're gonna be, you know, we're gonna be having a giveaway pretty soon. Listen, guys, we're gonna have our first giveaway. It's coming soon. Make sure to hit that subscribe, hit those notifications, and as always, smash that like, and go ahead in the comments below and tell us what you thought of this episode.